In 4.15, we now have the ability to easily visualize mask properties using the mask properties debug setting. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's grab a cube, we'll drop it in our scene here, and we'll duplicate it, and now we have two cubes. Now these cubes, we're going to go ahead and let them simulate physics, and we're going to look at the way they're set up. Now right now, we can't actually tell how they're set up. Let's say I change their center of mass. Let's change this one's center of mass down like -20. Oh, you know what? Let's go with -50. And let's change this one's center of mass to something like y of 50. Well, where is their center of mass? If we were to run this, you're going to see them react. Well, I should probably turn on the physics on this one. Let's see, this one, and turn its physics on, and then we'll just go and move these up a little bit. And you can see they have physics enabled. But where are the physics actually at? If I was to, for example, grab a sphere, let's move it down here. Let's move its off by 40 on the Y. Turn physics on and simulate it again. Well, you're going to notice our ball seems like it's acting really weird. Why is that? Well, we have our center of mass offset, but we have no real way of knowing where it's at until now. If we go under Show, and we'll go under Advanced, and we'll go under Mass Properties, now we can actually see where the mass is at and any force is applied to it. But it has to be in wireframe. And once we've done that, now you can actually see the center of mass, the mass properties changed on each of our items. So in this case, you can see this little debug widget right here. That little debug widget indicates where our mass properties are set up. That's why now when we hit play, you'll notice it's acting weird. If we were to eject and go back to wireframe, now you can see where our mass properties are at. You'll see because the mass properties are set off center, that's why we're getting this effect. Anything that has basically physics and has mass, these widgets will indicate their properties. And you can see it on here. We've moved this one down, and you can see it over here. We've moved this one down as well. You can actually see this one's moved a little bit off. And you can see this one affecting. So that's what our mass properties debug does. It allows us to see our mass properties if physics are applied, and it gives us the ability to debug them at runtime or design time, so we can maybe determine possible issues. We can also see forces when they're applied. What I mean by that is if we were to go back to play and bring this back to wireframe, so we'll go to wireframe and we'll look, this item right here, you can see these solid axes, all the same size basically. That means our inertia and our tensors and things like that are all being evenly applied. If they were being applied unevenly, for example, we had physics assets locking to each other, one of them pulling or pushing, and we have basically our inertia not being even, then we're going to see these things change and show appropriately. So we can actually see where forces are applied, pushed and pulled in real time. So that was again under Show, Advanced, Mass Properties. And you need to make sure you're under wireframe mode so you can actually see them correctly. In 4.15, we now have the ability to modify curves directly in our atom graph by using the new Modify Curve node. This one's pretty simple. Let's go ahead and do a Modify Curve in here. And by default, this is what you're going to find. It's going to ask you which pose to modify with an input and an output. And it's going to ask you the alpha or how much it's going to be basically applied. Let's go ahead and plug this in here. You can see we're going from our changes here in our atom graph. Right before our final animation pose, we're going to go ahead and modify the curve. We'll go ahead and apply this and we'll let it run. Now, the modified curve itself, well, if you look at it, it's really friggin' annoying, to be honest, to understand. It's got some settings, but nothing you can change. Well, you have to right-click on it, and you have the ability to add a curve pin. And this will give you any of the curves available inside this graph. We're going to go with Pinocchio, and we'll now see Pinocchio as our input pin. Now, if we were to go ahead and save and compile, you'll notice our nodes have been changed, and we can put a value in. In this case, I have no size. This is a variable I could feed in from somewhere and plug it directly into Pinocchio. Go ahead and save this, and we'll look at our character. At our character itself, if we can find his head, Here's his nose size. And if we adjusted this, it adjusts the curve in real time, as you can see here. So this allows us to, for example, feed this information in from our character or an external value, or get this from our character or an external value, and modify our curve directly at runtime right inside of our animation blueprint. In 4.15, font assets have basically been split. They're no longer just a font asset. You have a font asset and a font face asset. Now, what does that mean? Well, previously when you had a font, let's say for example we open up this one, we had things like our default font families, sizes, and we had the ability to set up our font assets for use inside the engine. But the font itself, the TrueType, for example, file, was tied directly to the font. So we basically duplicated things. Let's say you wanted one font in 5 different sizes for whatever reason. You just wanted to do this. You would have to have 5 different font assets, and it would contain the actual font file 5 different times. Now that things are split out into the font face and then the asset itself, the font face, if we open it up, contains basically the default settings for the font file itself. So we have our TrueType here. It's just my painter TrueType, the default hinting, and the default loading policy. Now if I wish to use this anywhere else, it's just a simple process of referencing it rather than opening up another file. So for example, if I wanted to make a new font, and I'll call this one Painter Large. Now when I open it up and add a font, I can just choose my painter itself, my font face, and I can set this to maybe 72. And now I have a large version of my painter and a normal version of my painter. And it just allows it to not have to reuse the same asset file, the file on disk, for example, over and over multiple times. Not a big change. That's basically what it is. That's basically what our changes are. It basically split it out into 2 different files. One, the disk version or your content version of your font, and the other one, the settings for your font. GPS, or basically location services, have been added to Unreal Engine 4.15 for mobile devices. These can all be found under Services, Mobile Location, and it gives you the basic ability to get GPS information from the mobile device. So for example, we have a few things to start and stop our location services. We can determine if the location services have changed by binding an event to it. So this would let us, for example, whenever our location changed, we can go ahead and fire off something. We could do things such as, are location services enabled? Not all devices support it, or location services may be disabled by the user, so you'll want to check first. And then you have things such as the actual location accuracy. You can determine how things are set up. Every device is different, as well as simply turn on your location services by initializing them and telling them how you want them set up. The get last known location one is the one that gives you the last known location. This is where you'll fill out your data structure, and this is where you determine your location information from our get last known location. And that's it, pretty simple. It allows you to get location data from your mobile device, supported by Android and iOS at this time, maybe other things in the future, and you can use it if you need location data. Material reroute nodes have finally been added to the editor in 4.15. And in case you don't know what a reroute node is, it basically gives us the ability to, instead of going from one point to another on a material graph, we can now add in something, for example, like this, and organize things and make things a little more organized and robust rather than having things going wherever they want. Now they're really simple to add. You can double click on any wire to add a reroute node. You can right click to remove them if you want. Or you can right click anywhere in your graph, type in reroute, and add a reroute node that's simply anywhere you want. And that's it, really simple. If you've used blueprints, you know what reroute nodes are. It allows us to easily change something from a giant unholy mess into something a little bit more organized by rerouting our lines into a more organized fashion. Pose snapshotting is a new feature in 4.15 that allows you to basically grab your current animation and take a snapshot of where it currently is, and then either change your current animation at a different time to that pose or to come out of it. It's useful if you need to blend smoothly between, for example, falling down and getting back up, or a ragdoll type animation. Let me go and show you the basics. So I'll hit play here, and here's my character. You can see him idling, and he runs, and he jumps. Now, at any point if I hit the E key, it's going to go ahead and snap a pose of whatever he's at. So right now, if I hit E, he's in the running pose. Now, at any point if I hit the T key, it's going to swap me into that saved pose, and you can see it happening. I'm interrupting my current animation blueprint and telling it to only display my pose, and you can see him posing. Now, if I hit the T key again, you'll watch him smoothly blend back. So it's useful, for example, let's say your character fell to the ground, grab the pose snapshot, you could ragdoll him if you want, and then when you're done, you can unpose him and bring him back out. Now, the basics on how this works is pretty simple. We've got a few new nodes. Primarily, you have Save Pose Snapshot and Snapshot Pose. In this case, Save Pose Snapshot comes off of my animation instance, and it basically targets the animation instance, grabs whatever the current animation is, and saves it to a snapshot name. Snapshot Pose will basically take that information, and you can grab information from the snapshot pose. So in this case, I'm grabbing the snapshot pose. I can store it out to a saved snapshot if maybe I want to save different snapshots for later, and then break it apart if I want to get information, the names of the bones and transforms and stuff like that. So this is useful, for example, to save out a snapshot and maybe you want to keep a group of them for later use. Once you have the snapshot saved, the animation blueprint knows about it now. So in this case, if I go into here, when I hit the T button, all I'm doing is telling my animation instance to set a custom Boolean. Nothing fancy. But what that Boolean does is allow my anim graph here to change between the idle and the pose state. You'll see if I click this, you can see it happening. All I'm doing in here is simply doing a simple check. If I am in my pose, then I can enter my pose transition. And all this does is uses the new node pose snapshot and plugs it into my final animation. So basically, as you can see here, I can go from my idle at any point into my pose whenever it's here, simply by transitioning my isPose Boolean and calling the pose snapshot with the name of your snapshot name. And you can have multiple values for your snapshot name. You can save multiple snapshots and it will remember them. I don't know if there's a limit or not. I haven't run into a problem, but that's the basics of it. Save a pose snapshot at some point and then use the pose snapshot into your animation in order to make it usable. And of course, you can toggle it on and off, and this simply will smoothly feed back and forth. So as you can see here, I could jump and snapshot and later bring it in. And then when I'm done with it, let go of it. And you'll notice it smoothly transitions between the pose and the non-pose. And that's it. That is the basics of the pose snapshot. There's more information in the online documentation if needed.